Hello, this is old Mr. Kent of MrKent.com, and the road I'm headed down is the one that is by the cement plant, if you've ever watched any of my videos about that. And I'm headed down to an intersection here, which is the name of the road is Combs Road, and it's one of only two roads that can go from where I live now out to my son's place to where we plan to move. And that intersection has been closed and is supposed to open tomorrow. So I thought, well, I'm going to go check that out because the other route will be closed on Saturday because they're doing construction. And if this one isn't finished and that one's closed on Saturday, it's going to make it awful hard for fire engines to get out to put out fires. So anyway, we're going to take a look at that. And then while we're looking at that, I'll go ahead and relate a story that has to do with making a checklist. And I guess if you want to hear the story, you can continue, or you can switch back to doing whatever you were doing. But my grandson, he loves to hear me tell stories, and his favorite story is about when I was a kid and I tried to sneak out of church while they were praying, and I ended up getting spanked by my dad. Now here we come up to the intersection, and this is supposed to be ready to use tomorrow, and I see some big holes, so we'll just fly around that and take a look. But it doesn't look too hopeful. This is about 5:30, 5:45 in the morning. Nobody's working yet. Anyway, so the preacher had said every eye closed and every head bowed, and so I thought now's a good time to sneak out of Sunday school. So, but that somebody was cheating. Anyway, so this story has to do with making a checklist. Now, when I first got my Cessna 150, and I'll stick another picture taken off from a mountain airstrip. And by the way, that guy, he hadn't been here for a while, as you can tell. He thought he was going to go over and work on the irrigation canal, and so he'll figure out his way to get there. Anyway, when I got my Cessna, it had a slight crack across the right side of the windshield, and I didn't worry too much about it. And as the years went by, that crack kept growing over towards the left side, and I thought, no big deal. I just put 100-mile-an-hour duct tape on it, which I kept doing. Well, so as time went by, it got all the way over, and I thought, well, no big deal. I'll fix it when it's broke. And so one day I was taking one of my students for a ride, and we landed at a really rough airstrip, and it was all rocky and vibrating and everything. And so I didn't notice at the time we were landing. And now you can kind of look in the middle of the picture. They've got something across that big ditch, and it looks like they're holding something up. And I don't know if there's supposed to be a sewer pipe going right through there. So I hope they get it done by tomorrow. Anyway, back to the story. And so we landed, and then we went to take off again. When we took off, I always thought the wind would blow the windshield back towards the plane. But as it turned out, there's so much suction coming over the top of the fuselage that it was sucking the window out of the plane about 2 inches at the top. So anyway, I figured, well, it's time to replace it. So I ordered a new windshield. And at that time, I had my plane tied down at an ag strip, agricultural strip, where they take spray planes off, and they used helicopters and everything. And so the guy let me tie my plane down there for a small fee. And he also had a hangar. So when I got my windshield, I asked him if I could use the hangar, and he's a real nice guy, and he said, sure. So I pushed my plane into the hangar and started going through the process of drilling out rivets and unscrewing bolts and getting the old windshield out of the plane. I wanted to say drone. Anyway, this was my 170. So, you had to be up on a ladder to work on that and so forth. So it took me about a week to get everything torn out and cleaned up, and then fit the new one in and drill. I can't remember all the details. It's been too many years. But anyway, it took me about a week to get that. Now over there at the end of that irrigation ditch, you can see that white truck. That's the guy that showed up thinking the road was still open. And so anyway, at the end of the week, I had spent every day in my spare time. I'd gone out and worked on it, and spent all kinds of time there. And so at the end of the week, I can't remember all the details because it's been too long, but I was all done, and there was a guy who was one of the crop duster pilots, and he had a fairly good-sized tank, maybe a 200-gallon tank, that he had rolled over to the door of the hangar, and he was waiting for me to finish so he could go inside and spray paint that can, or that tank. So and it had legs and stuff on it. So anyway, so I thought, I was just about to get done, and so I thought I'll just push my plane out and he can get in there, and then I want to go check it out. I want to take off and make sure that the windshield is in tight and so forth. And so, I normally I would have done a checklist, but on that particular day, I thought, man, I've been working on the plane all week. I know everything is okay. So I just pushed it out, and the hangar was at the, we'll say, the north end of the strip, and we always took off from the north end and then landed from the south end because it was gravel down at that end. It was only paved a little ways. So got in my plane, taxied to the takeoff position, took off, and started climbing. And I had to climb, I was making a long circular climb over the strip just in case the windshield popped out or something, So I was circling and climbing and looking out. And this windshield was thicker, so there was a little bit of distortion to the sides, which the other one didn't have because it was thinner. And I noticed that, and I was climbing up. And I don't know exactly how high I climbed, but I probably climbed to about 400 or 500 feet above the strip, and it looked like everything was okay. So I decided, well, I'm going to go for a ride with this thing. And so I started heading, I think I was headed north, and started flying, and I leaned out the engine, and I don't know if you know what that means, but in an airplane, the higher you go, the less fuel you need. So there's a control that you can lean the engine out and burn less gas and get more efficiency. So I leaned out the engine, and I'm flying along, and I was just looking at everything and looking out the window and looking at the different amount of distortion and everything. And pretty soon I looked down, and my oil temperature of the engine was in the red. And that's when I remembered that I had they have these sponge rubber things that you can put into the air intake of the cowling to keep the birds out. And it's on the checklist, but I didn't read the checklist, and so those sponge rubber things were still in, and the engine couldn't cool. And I panicked, and now that's what you don't want to do when you're flying, but I panicked, and I said, oh man, I just fixed my windshield, now I'm going to burn up my engine. So I made a 5-second turnaround and started headed back towards the landing strip, and the glide ratio of a Cessna 170 is pretty good, so I decided I'm just going to glide in. So I pulled the throttle and killed the engine, and the propeller was blowing, turning in the wind, and I was going along, and so I thought, man, I just don't want to wreck this plane. So as I got closer to the strip, now the north end of the strip also had an apple orchard. And so as I came over the little town that's nearby, I was way too high to land, so I put it into a slip, which means you put the plane sideways and fall through the air. And I put it into a slip, and then all of a sudden I realized, well, that was stupid because it was too high if I had an engine running, and I didn't have an engine running. So I just started gritting my teeth, and I was coming down over that orchard, and as I came down over the orchard, I got closer and closer. I mean, my wheels must have been touching some of the branches, and so I got closer and closer. And every time the prop would come around, it would throw turbulence on the wings, and the plane was shuddering. And I was doing everything I could to hold the nose up without stalling. And finally, I got to the end of the orchard, and I dropped down, and I landed right in front of the hangar. Unfortunately, nobody was on the strip because my engine wasn't running. They couldn't hear me coming in. And so I landed and jumped out and went to pull out the foam things, and half of them were already gone because they had been sucked in over the engine. And as it turns out, in my panic, all I had to do, remember I had leaned the engine? Well, the engine runs a lot hotter when you lean the engine. And since I didn't have all the holes unplugged, it was running hot. All I had to do was to push the lean control in, make that gas richer, because that cools the engine. All I had to do was just do that and slow down and start my descent, and I could have landed just fine and flown the plane and I wouldn't have a story to tell. So anyway, fortunately, nobody was on the runway when I came in with my dead stick landing, is what it's called. And so because I didn't look at the checklist, I ended up doing a dead stick landing, and I almost crashed my plane into an apple orchard. So anyway, that's another one of my stories, and I'm sticking to it. So I want to thank you for watching, and God bless.